The new user management permissions mean that you have more options than ever before. But now the question is, what should I do with those options to have the best outcome? Every situation is different, but here are a few best practices to get you thinking, some of which I've definitely learned the hard way. If you have an external consultant, paid search manager, or other person outside your organization, you can now give collaborate permissions to those who just need to see the data but make no actual changes. Take a look what that looks like. You could give just the read and analyze permissions if you want to be very strict, but in my experience, organizations need more collaboration information sharing, not less. The collaborate option is low risk because the user still cannot affect filters or most other potentially dangerous settings. Now, you may want to give edit permissions to actual web analytics consultants, whether external or internal to your organization, if they need to make changes to the account or to the underlying settings. In the case of those external consultants, you could give all the way up to edit, but I simply wouldn't give user management permissions at all, or at least with very few exceptions. I can tell you from experience of my own as an outside consultant, it's a sometimes awkward conversation to have to tell a client that I needed full admin permissions to do my job under the old settings. Now with the new permissions, they can rest somewhat easier knowing that people outside the organization are more limited in the changes they can make. Now, if you yourself are a consultant or agency, even though you can now give admin to individual web properties, resist the temptation to put multiple clients in a single account, even if you give them their own web properties. It's still against the terms of service and still a bad idea. Each client belongs in a separate account, and you can simply give yourself access to each, so that way you can still access them all via single login with the drop-down list on the left. Here I have 3 different accounts and their associated web properties and views, all accessed via my single login. As a general rule, I suggest you be generous with the collaborate permission, but stingy with those 2 admin functions, particularly the manage users one. Now you also have to think about which level in the hierarchy to apply the permissions. One of the problems with the old way was that even if you give user access when you first created the user's account, which is now the read and analyze permissions, they will see the account properly at first, but as you added new views, that user wouldn't be able to see them or even know they exist, which often causes confusion in the organization as analysts will be referring to views that others didn't even know existed. Now you could still do that if you wanted to, but most of the time you don't. So read and analyze access to the entire account ensures that you avoid that problem and users can at least see what is contained in the account. The only time that's not a good idea is if you need to keep data separate in a scenario where some data, financial transaction data perhaps, is on a need-to-know basis. You can potentially solve that by setting the view at the web property level instead of the account level. Let's take a look what that looks like. When I come here to the main admin screen, on the left side we see all the account settings, in the middle we see the settings for each web property and then the associated profiles. I can set the user management permissions at each level in the hierarchy. So if I were to set that down here in the profile, it would affect just that profile. But if I go here and set that at the account level, say for example read and analyze, that person now will at least be able to see what's contained in the account all the way down in each web property and each view below this account. Now as we alluded to before, give careful thought to who should have manage users permissions, and in general you want to limit the number of those admins and review that list often. For consultancies with several employees in the organization, you may want to have the client give you admin privileges, either edit or manage users, to one shared login that is shared among a very select group of staff, and then collaborate access levels to another shared login that any consultant on the project can use. That way if something needs to be changed, you still have that capability within your organization, but you aren't unnecessarily giving too broad of admin access to your client's accounts unnecessarily, which both the client and your liability insurance company will appreciate. As I think you'll agree, this is a long overdue and most welcome update to allow us to give access to those who need to do their jobs without unnecessary risk.